As you've seen the transition of the state funding to WA NDIS and NDIS, and there's a lot of change happening, and many organizations have gone through large changes in terms of the way they operate, the way they look at numbers, the marketization of the sector, and all of that around, which would have pushed to go through a change journey within your organization, within your recent roles. And when you have gone through a change journey, did you redo the values around the organization, and what was that journey like?
The short answer is no. We didn't necessarily redo the values of the organization, because I think that you always have to stay true to the values of the organization. That's the reason, that underpins everything we do. So it's really more about, in that change process, I think the most important value to demonstrate on a day-to-day basis is respect. And that respect is demonstrated in the form of being open, honest, transparent, communicating, bringing people on the journey. And if difficult decisions need to be made around any of the people impacted by the organization, whether they're employees, volunteers, or the people that we support, that everything that's done to enact that decision is done with respect.
Okay. And as you have suggested that, when the typical question of when you're keeping that respect and that equity part in the forefront, and the question of sustainability comes to the play. So the typical question is, how do you manage the two? How do you weigh the balance when you have sustainability and you want to deliver a good care service to the participants? How do you manage those scenarios, keeping your values underpinned?
There's no doubt that the NDIS in particular has created a lot of conflict for organizations and people, tension, say, rather than conflict, for organizations and people around maintaining that quality of care and support within a vision of remaining sustainable. It's also present in other government contracts as well, not just NDIS, but NDIS is the most significant and tangible example of that, I think. It's recognizing that there's a greater good. And the greater good comes from the organization being sustainable. So it needs to be viable now and sustainable into the future to continue to deliver support to people. Any single organization, any single individual is never going to be able to deliver all the support that's needed in society, in the broader community. Demand, sadly, is always going to outstrip the ability or the capacity of our organizations, our community, our government sector, our not-for-profit sector to meet everyone's needs. But if we don't keep an eye on the sustainability of organizations,
we'll not be able to do the good.
We'll reduce our ability to at least have the impact on those individuals that we can have that impact with.
Very much. And if we talk about purpose of individual organization, which is, staying core to the value system, what do you feel, how has the purpose changed overall from a sector point of view in terms of the new players coming in, privatization, private players coming in and delivering care services to the vulnerable people? What do you feel the values of the sector has changed across the last 5-7 years?
You're speaking specifically about the NDIS and disability.
Disability and aged care, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. So I'm not in a position to talk about aged care at all, but certainly within the disability sector, the significant concern across the not-for-profit sector in terms of disability support is that quality will suffer with, broadly speaking, with the pricing model that the NDIS provides and the opportunity for, or the ability of organizations to remain sustainable. And that when we introduce shareholder dividend into the mix, which is what happens with private companies, whether those shareholders are owners or investors, that the risk is that corners will be cut around the care and support of the people that are seeking support. I'm not saying that that's what's happening, but that's certainly been first and foremost in the minds of the sector. Secondly, the reality, I can say that this is the reality, is that what happens is that the private sector or the commercial sector that has come into the disability support space is absolutely focused on the bottom line and return. And that means that to some extent there's a bit of cherry picking around the people that they choose to support. And what we see here in Western Australia, here at Uniting WA right now, is people with very complex support needs that it's very difficult to get the appropriate level of funding from the NDIS, and we are the providers of last resort. And when you attach this to our mission and our purpose and our values that underpin the work we do every day, there has been some financial impact on our organization and others I know from continuing to provide support that might not, strictly speaking, be viable. So in effect, what we're looking at, subsidization of that support.